Hey, it's Cosmic Charles, and I thought I'd show a quick and small update to the Bugle Blade deck that I built a while back. Yeah, nothing really much. I decided to go up to 18 planes because the deck is fairly mana hungry, and it is not fast. You try to grind the opponent out with it. And I thought I'd just do a quick little history slash deck tech here. So, long ago, back in 2016, I believe it was 2016, I built this deck that was based off of the modern deck at the time, known as Little Kid Luck, and that was a Gavany Township deck. So I used travel preparations alongside Safe Hold Elite and Renclaw Trow to create like a very grindy deck against control decks. Because what was interesting, Modern and Pauper were actually in a similar place back then in terms of edicts were the effect of the day. Back in Pauper at that time, the aggro decks were either go wide or go tall with Bogles, so all you had to do really was have field wipe for the wide and edict for the tall, and they worked together for pretty well. So if you built a deck that could deal with edicts well and field wipe well, you were really well positioned. And that was the Green White Exalted, as most people called it. I believe the professor did a video on it, and so did any new province and a couple other people, because it was a really unassuming deck. I had a lot of fun with it, but eventually just got outmoded. But I feel like this deck is the inheritor of the Little Kid Luck strategy of having creatures. It's creatures slash, I guess, cards in general that help to not necessarily dead, but work very well against the interaction, the popular interaction of the day. And the popular interaction of the day are various forms of one damage effects to all creatures, such as, like electricity type things. I believe End the Festivities is very popular. Suffocating Fumes, there's like some 2 damage spells as well. So that means the value in Idyllic Range, which is like our Gavany Township stand-in, is very strong. The +1 counter onto a 1/1 now protects against a festivities type stuff, or onto a 2/2 now means, hey, your breath weapon isn't going to do anything. And that's the same case with Great Sortier and Ramosian Rally. So you have these 12 protection spells, essentially, slash pump spells, and it's been quite effective. So it's doing what Little Kid Luck did in Modern, except rather than playing around edicts, although this deck does play around edicts pretty well as well, it plays around board wipe, and it has some life gain synergies for burn, and it has some a little bit things here and there versus a lot of different decks. So in a nutshell, basically what this deck's trying to do, rather than go with like aggressive creatures trying to attack your opponent, you're trying to go with more defensive creatures against interaction, which makes this deck very good against other mid-range decks, control decks, aggro decks, fair decks in general. It struggles very hard against any deck that does something unfair. For example, its matchup against Dimir Terror is pretty good, except when they have their like broken starts, when they get like 3/5/5s out on turn 3. Then you're probably not going to win that because you don't run any removal, and I think it's right not to. You want your opponent to interact with your creatures. Essentially, when you play this deck, what you're trying to do is you're trying to turn your creatures into a lightning rod for their interaction, because you run 30 of them, and they almost all of them replace themselves, either with a card or with another copy of themselves or something like that. The only one that doesn't is Dawnbringer Cleric. So you want your opponent to interact as much as possible with your creatures, because they're going to lose the card advantage race 100% if they do, like, even a field wipe. Usually you end up on the positive side of that interaction. So that's how you win with this deck. Make your opponent engage. You lose if they can ignore your creatures. If your creatures don't mean anything to them, you're not going to win. Yeah, and basically my sideboard is reflective of that. I don't think you have any game against walls, so I don't even bother. I don't think you can beat FAMs. You do have these 4 Relic of Progenitus, or Progeniti perhaps, but I don't think it's going to be enough. If they're an inexperienced FAMs player, you can probably get them in time, but yeah, FAMs and walls are a terrible matchup. Any type of combo deck, terrible matchup. But fair decks, you're just gonna run over them. And today we're facing a new a fair Tron deck called Chonker Tron. I wasn't aware that it was an archetype until recently. I've been playing it a fair bit though. It's pretty popular at the time, and it's pretty cool. I like the fact that it's colorless and gets around prismatic strands that way. A very popular card at the moment. Yeah, so I thought I'd show you just how much this deck can deal with in terms of not having removal, and I thought Chonkertron might be a good example of that. Alright, so without further ado, let's get on to the match. Oh, and one more thing I forgot to mention, just as an example of how good this deck is against, removal pile type decks. One of the inaugural matches against this deck was against MBC. Now, to be fair, I did lose this match, but game one, he had a Kumbaya Witches out on turn 2, then a second copy of Kumbaya Witches out, I believe, on like turn 5 or 6, and he was at 1 life by the end of it. It was a really close game. I almost killed him through his Kumbaya Witches triggers targeting my creatures. Like, that is, and me then targeting him with the other part of the Witch's ability. So he actually couldn't use him by the end of the game. Like, that is just how grindy with creatures this deck is. Alright, on to the match. Okay, game 1 against Chonkertron. This was in the queues. And yeah, can't keep that hand. Can't keep that hand. So we're going to 5. We can keep hitting this hand. This is back when I was running 21 lands. You need to run more than that. It's important. So, I play the Loon Arc Veteran, and our opponent plays a Chrome Star. Now, at this time, I thought it's up against the other Tron, the Eggs Tron. I'm like, oh god, I guess there's no way you could beat that deck. But I almost conceded, but and then I saw this, and I'm like, oh wait, Ancient Stirring. So I thought maybe they'd be Classic Tron. I wasn't aware that there was a new build of Tron running around at this time. And there goes Militia Bugler, and let's see what I hit. I hit another Bugler. I will leave the Fisher. And I get in for 2, gaining 1. And this is what I mean about the incidental life gain. I've already gained 3 life without even really doing much. And they play a Wretched Griff, hoping to clog up the ground, but I draw a Greatsword of Tear naturally. Sometimes just gotta let it happen naturally. And then I get in, and I tap down the Wretched Griff, and I get in for 5. And they go Breath Weapon. Now here I think it was a bit of a waste of a Remosian Rally here. I should have just let the cat die and reanimated it, because it only protected 1 creature. But, I'm a little impulsive sometimes. And they go Self-Assembler. Getting more Self-Assembler. They have their own Squadron Hawk. That Idyllic Range is pretty clutch as well. We're running hits, because that means this Sacred Cat can now swing through a Wretched Griff. I guess I'll get the Fisher here? Yeah. Fisher's going to be nice. Now, of note, you can return the other side of this Lunarch Veteran to reset it. But I think I'd rather have the Flyer rather than go Lunarch Veteran, Core Sky Fisher, return Lunarch Veteran. So I'm likely going to, I don't know, probably just going to return the Idyllic Range here. That seems to be usually the better target for Core Sky Fisher half the time. And they gain some life with the Boulder Branch Golem, and they make a 7/7. But this is what I mean by the force of your field. They really can't attack with that 7/7, because I can just chump pretty easily, like I have the Squadron Hawk here. Oh, Core Sky Fisher, returning Grange, and playing the Squadron Hawk, and we're going to put a +1/+1 counter onto the Squadron Hawk. Now here I should move the sword over to the Squadron Hawk, so I can try and play around another copy of Breath Weapon after putting the counter on it, but I don't for some reason, and I don't know why I didn't. Probably just laziness on my part, not really thinking things through. Okay, and then they go Crystal Grotto, they scry 1 to the bottom, and they go Ancient Stirrings, revealing another copy of Wretched Griff, and they play a Crusher. So that's pretty problematic for me. I can go Luminous Phantom into Squadron Hawk, and I will get in there with my flyers. Yeah, I really should have moved that sword over there. I don't need this. Oh, I know why I did that, because I wanted my Core Skyfisher to be able to swing through a Wretched Griff. That's why I kept it on there. That makes sense now. And they go Annihilator 2, and they Breath Weapon. And here I make a little mistake. I game block the Crusher with all my blockers. I only needed to block with the Sacred Cat and the Bugler here, because there's 2 damage on it. Again, this is being a little lazy. This was in the queues. I don't take it quite as... I'm a little looser when I play here. And they go... Self-Assembler. To Self-Assembler. I've noted them at 35 life, and they're in a 2-turn clock. So if all they have... if they can't gain more life or block, because of this second Greatsword stops their second Wretched Griff, then they will be dead. Because they can't kill me here. But that is a Boulder Branch Golem, so unfortunately I lost game 1. But let's see how it goes for the other games. Okay, so game 2, I just brought in 2 Dust to Dust. This was a slightly different build. I was testing out the Monarch card in here at the time, so I just took out the Monarch card and probably one of my 2 elves in the deck. I do think 18 planes is the right number, though. As you can see, I'm just constantly hungry for lands. And they play a star. Likely just going to get the Greatsword down here. I want to get this going as soon as possible to make my cat as big as possible. And I get in for 1. Also helps to play around the breath weapons. They seem to likely have they have at least 4 probably. And yes, so I play the Inspector. That'll help me play around breath weapon rather a little bit with this Hermosian Rally. Let's see what they do. Nothing. Okay, I'll play a Lunarch Veteran and a Safehold Elite. Gaining some life. And I get in. They're going to kill this veteran with the breath weapon they're representing, but I can at least translate this Hermosian Rally into protection for 3 of my creatures plus 2 damage. So that's pretty good, I think. I think that's a good exchange. And I get in. And they're at 11 and I'm at 28. So they need to... I guess they didn't respect me and kept a kind of slow hand. They really should not have. If they go Tron Land, Tron Land, Tron Land, Crusher, I'm probably out of the game because they don't run Journey to Nowhere. But again, this deck has a great matchup against anything fair. So you don't want to keep a fair hand against it because you're probably not going to be able to outfare the fair deck. And there's Luminous Phantom. Now I could reset it here, but I think I'd likely rather Grange, I imagine. That's a high value target for me because you only run 12 pump effects, so I'd like to reoccur those. There's Core Skyfisher, return the Grange. Likely going to shift that Greatsword over next turn, depending on what they play here. Twin Silk Spider, not very good. And against me. Yep. And they can see it. Again, you're not going to outfare the fair deck, so try and be as unfair as possible if you ever, play against a deck like this. Don't try and go fair, go unfair. All right, and that was game 2. Let's see for game 3. Okay, game 3 against Chonker Tron. Let's see how we did. All right, and I think we both get to keep 7. That's nice. Now here you can see the downside of Grange a little bit. I still think it's worth running 4, but sometimes it will be a tap land, and I will typically hold it and hope I draw planes rather than try and play a 2-drop, because, 1/1 Sacred, playing nothing on turn 1 versus playing a Safehold Leader or Greatsword on turn 2 is about the same as playing a Sacred Cat on turn 1 and then doing nothing on turn 2. So I feel like the upside is enough for me to risk it. And I will likely start playing out these swords. Yeah, and again, I am running 22 lands now. I was running 21, but as you can see, this deck has so many land sinks. Sorry, so many mana sinks that you need to hit your land drops. And that was lucky. I got another land drop. Probably going Elite here if I had to guess. And I'm going to equip the Greatsword to the cat so I can keep on swinging through the Boulder Branch Golem. There we go. Gaining some life. Our opponent plays a map, so they're going to have Tron this turn, I believe, and they play a self-assembler. But again, the sword makes up for a lot of sense, and you're about to see the power of double sword, by the way, especially with these two recursive creatures. This is going to quickly overcome almost anything any deck could do. Yeah, boom, boom. In terms of creature strength on the board, they're 3/3s now. They're going to be 4/4s and 5/5s. So here the opponent gets in because they can't block, and they have to make the difficult decision to double breath weapon, wiping their own field and not even wiping mine. Plus this cat comes back. That was the only thing they could do though. Like those things are going to get over range pretty quickly. And here I do core Skyfisher. I decide to go a little wide, and this great sword is going to reset the save full delete, which I love doing so much. As I said in the intro, I built an entire deck around that synergy back in 2016. And there's self-assembler, and they grab another self-assembler. But unfortunately for them, I just have swords for days, and they're not going to be able to block. And do I play another sword here? Nope, I get this. Oh yes, I like getting Squadron Hawk down for a couple of reasons. One, it makes it so that I'm not going to draw another Squadron Hawk, or at least I'm less likely to. And two, it makes it more likely for me to draw lands, because I'm constantly mana hungry with this deck, which is why I now run 18 planes and 4 Grange. Alright, and it looks like they conceded, so that was the match. Alright, and yeah, I do think this deck is really good against any meta that's full of control, mid-range, and aggro, and also tempo as well. I've been playing to be fair, I haven't played mono blue outside of tournament practice. In tournament practice, I haven't lost yet to it, but that's tournament practice, so it doesn't really say very much. So I do think this deck is really well suited against anything that's fair. And so if you have a fair meta, bring this, you should do well. If you have an unfair meta, you do not bring this deck. It will not do well. All right. So that means I would not bring this deck to League right now, because it seems like FAMS is everywhere. Good for my Poison Storm deck, bad for Bugle Blade. All right, that was that, and I hope you have a good one.